Okay, Harry Gregson-Williams. You were the composer on Confirmation. What about that film, which was made for HBO, spoke to you and made you want to write music for it?
Well, I think when I read the script, I didn't have any idea about this incident between Clarence Thompson and Anita Hill. I really didn't, and I guess my little American dream started in June 1995 when I came over from England. I'm sure you can't tell from my accent. It's very heavily disguised now. But so this incident took place before that, and so I was ignorant about that. So when I read the script, I thought this is strange. This can't be true. This is so odd. But it was an incredibly important moment in American history in many ways. Yeah, when I read the script, first thing I did was I did my research. Went on to the internet to find out if the film was really telling the facts how they were, and almost verbatim in some of the really important speeches that Kerry Washington gives as Anita Hill. They are the word for word. This is what occurred, and what shocked me mostly was the kind of the way she was treated and the way this court was set up with and of course I've only ever known Joe Biden as Obama's sidekick, and perfectly pleasant seeming man. I have nothing against the guy, but I didn't realize he presided over this kangaroo court, for better or for worse. What I liked about the script was that it didn't tell me, the reader, and I hope when you see the film, the viewer, it doesn't tell you what to think at all. It just lays the facts out, and it stays fairly neutral. Clarence has his moment. Anita has her moment, and the shocking thing about it all was how it unraveled, and how Clarence sits on the Supreme Court today, despite what was said at the time. And I think it does a pretty good job of leaving the viewer pondering these facts, and still not quite knowing what to think, apart from, well, this would be a really bizarre lie to make up if it was a lie. That's what I kept thinking. She must be telling the truth. She has to be telling the truth. Why would she? And then one of the details one discovers in the film is that she was subpoenaed. She didn't ask for this. She didn't come forward saying, "Hey, I've got something to say." Whoever it was it the FBI or the people who investigate people, came and spoke to her and said, "Look, is there anything we need to know?" And she hesitated, but she decided to tell the truth, her truth. Whether that is the truth or not, the viewer has to make up their mind. And I liked the way that Rick, the director, laid it out. He was a true pleasure to work with. I'd not met him or worked with him before, and I hadn't done an HBO movie before. And so all these things, all these factors, all these moons aligned, and I thought, well, I saw my chance in my schedule. I thought I'd love to do this. My brother Rupert is a composer and gets to do Veep.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So he knows all about. He knows the guys at HBO, and they were all they thought they'd got his sloppy seconds to get me rather than him. They had to check my first name, I think, on the docket. But yeah, it was me. But yeah, Roops gets to do Veep, so he knows those guys. I called him immediately. Said, "Look, are these guys terrors or are they good to work with?" And he's like, "Well, I've had a fantastic experience with them." So that was mine too.
Well, was the experience much different from feature films in terms of amount of time that you're given to write music, or?
No, actually, no. Very similar. There was enough time. I wouldn't say inordinate amount of time, but there was certainly plenty of time to do this. As a film composer, one homes in on the central creative vision, and that comes from the director usually, and on this occasion that was no different. And he had some strong producers who also needed to sign off on the music and have their say. So we had a few meetings with the hierarchy at HBO, which went very well. They had their comments, their very fair comments, some notes that I addressed. But mainly I was concerned with Rick and his film editor, as they were kind of the engine room of this creation.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, I mean, it is very even-handed, you know, and Clarence is given his moment. There's even some ambiguity in certain parts about whether or not Anita's telling the truth, I think. But so how do you as a composer express all of these different themes in this story?
Zach, pretty much like you just said it, literally with clearly delineated themes. You know, there's a very pure, quite straightforward theme for Anita, which appeared on piano in a couple of spots, and then sometimes as woodwinds, a couple of clarinets playing her tune. You know, obviously I went after her characteristics and tried to reflect them in the music, which were strength, and I try to write an honest theme, if you can imagine that as a dishonest one. You know, often as a film composer, one can push things one way or the other, despite what's going on the screen. One can push the audience towards a certain emotion. But it was my job on this particular score not to do that, but to try and reflect their genuine characteristics. So obviously Anita had her theme. Clarence did. You know, he was you know, the actor who played him, and actually Clarence in real life, a kind of rotund, shall we say? You know, and that the sort of determination and tenacity in his character, I picked out a French horn, which had a kind of slightly courtly feel to it, or something with some strength, and his unwavering attitude towards the allegations. You know, so his theme is quite strong, not brazen, and doesn't really waver. And the third thematic material that I leaned on was the kind of the process. The film has a lot of film archive footage, which places you in that year quite successfully. And my job when those clips were rolling was to kind of burble, can I say that? Is that a word even? To burble underneath underneath what was going on, to cause some momentum, some forward thrust, so that the viewer and the film didn't get stuck in one place, to help move things along. You know, rhythmic textures achieved through string ostinati, i.e. repetitive little ostinati, as you call them. And I tried to create a sense of impetus and energy, which I figured these places needed. So one had that burbling along, and intermittently Clarence's theme and Anita's theme. And ultimately this wasn't a clash of the titans. There wasn't a scene at the end of this movie where, you know, had this been any number of Hollywood movies, there'd have been a shootout. Yeah, one of them started hitting the other one, and we'd have had a winner, a success. The bad guy would lose, or something. In this case, not so much, which again was quite appealing. We kind of teed it up and then left it to the viewer to decide what they thought.
Yeah, and it's amazing how riveting it is, too, considering how much of it takes place in this one room during the Senate Judiciary hearings. You know, and I was surprised that their speeches are given verbatim in here, you know. I mean, people talking for 5 to 10 minutes at a time, it seems.
Yeah, you know, at moments it felt very much like I was scoring a documentary. And, you know, I haven't done that much in that medium. I did a little, funny enough, a YouTube movie, which Ridley Scott produced, called Life in a Day, which I absolutely loved. But, you know, when I started scoring that, this is quite a few years back now, it was the first documentary I'd done. And I realized quite quickly, when something's factual, one didn't want to press on the score anything that wasn't quite there. Let's look at it another way. You know, I'm scoring Ben Affleck's film Live by Night right now. He's just directed this film, and he stars in it along with Sienna Miller and a couple of other awesome actors. And you know, there are moments where there are moments where the music needs to push the audience into or lead them down a path or help tee up various emotions. In Confirmation, I really had to avoid that for fear of tipping the audience off to something that wasn't really my place to say, if that makes any sense. But you touched on the kind of the absurdity and media pandemonium that surrounded this thing. There's a cool scene where the music really had to jump out and grab you when Anita is first kind of chased down by journalists, and there's a kind of car chase ensues. This is a girl who was there really unwittingly and unwittingly. She had no idea. Well, I was going to say she had no idea this is where it would all lead, but she probably did. But she felt that she didn't have an alternative, that she had to speak the truth. And if you believe her, her truth was worth speaking. I mean, the guy didn't lay hands on her, but was he appropriate? No, he was pretty inappropriate. That's what she said. And she was being asked if there was anything that people might need to know before this guy was nominated to the highest court in the land. So I thought it was quite a unique film, this, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. And musically, I was supporting a lot of what was going on. It wasn't one of those movies, I don't know, like a Shrek or a Narnia or one of the many Tony Scott movies I've done, where the music, kind of jumps up and beat you over the head. No, it was very much a movie where the music had to support what was going on and be mindful of the amount of dialogue that was happening.
Mm-hmm. And the timing of this movie too is pretty perfect. I mean, not only are we in...
Wasn't it? It was pretty cool. The only thing that might have made it cooler is if Joe Biden had decided to run for president. I was really hoping he would. There was a moment when then the press was saying that he might, and we were like, wow, it doesn't. Yeah, that could have been really cool. But yeah, and I think it's relevant today to revisit that, and for people like myself who didn't know anything about it to have their attention drawn to it. A couple of my children, when I say a couple, I do have 5 of them. A couple of them are in high school, and obviously they hadn't either their school doesn't teach the American history very well, or they haven't got to that part yet. Or it's not on the syllabus, but they were pretty fascinated by it and thought that it must be a made-up story. And I assured them it really wasn't. This is, but the laws of the land concerning the confirmation of someone to the Supreme Court, I think were made by Thomas Jefferson. I mean, a long time ago, and maybe, just maybe, someone should think of trying to amend them. But Obama has I don't know whether he's nominated his guy, but someone's got to fill a vacant seat, haven't they, at the Supreme Court? So we've got all this to look forward to again. Hopefully, it can be perhaps laid out in a fairer way that reflects where we are as a nation in 2016.
Yeah, one can only hope. So lastly, I want to ask you, we're an awards website, and you've been recognized by the Golden Globes, BAFTA, ASCAP, Annie Awards. What does that kind of recognition mean for you?
Well, obviously it's a compliment, but I can tell you something. As a composer who's pretty busy, it's not the focus of my attention. I mean, it's really, it doesn't come onto my radar until something like this does. So we're talking about it. I have no expectations at all. I don't get to watch too much TV, but I know what I have seen and I know what I like. I guess I'll be able to vote myself for I won't be voting for myself. I'll be voting. Should I tell you a couple of the things I've really enjoyed on TV?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I can't think of anything more I've enjoyed than Fargo. And when I saw that they were making a TV series of a movie, especially a movie like Fargo, I'm like, oh man, can't someone come up with a new idea? Why do we have to have these spawn these sort of things? But frankly, the acting, and I actually loved what they did with music. I don't think it was composed so much as what we call needle drops. You know, one episode might have a lot of Puccini in it, or you know, they made it a total sort of vocal choral kind of episode. One episode might have a bunch of blues in it, but I loved the. I'm a sucker for the Minnesota accent. You betcha. I can't get over it. I love it. So I really enjoyed that. And there are a couple of other things that have definitely hit my button. But you know, in terms of awards, I think, you know, we all who work in the industry, we all chisel away, and if it happens, it happens. And you know, obviously, one's very grateful. But if not, well, sour grapes, of course.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you again, and congratulations on your work.
Okay, thanks, Zach. All right, man.
You're welcome. Have a great day.